Welcome to Lincoln Fire and Rescue on LNK TV. I am Dale Johnson. Today, our focus will be response time, how long it takes for that first unit to pull up to your house, how two new fire stations and the relocation of two other stations impact response times, and how living near these stations could lower your insurance. So, pocketbook talk today on LNK TV with LFR, and Captain Dave Engler Zooms with me today to get into the weeds of all this. Dave, thank you very much. Good to have you with me.
Pleasure. Thank you.
For people who find themselves in an emergency, as I know, it can seem like it takes a long time for a unit to arrive, but trust me, crews are doing everything within their power to get to an emergency as fast as they possibly can without endangering the public. So let's talk about response time. What latest statistics do you have regarding response time?
Okay, when we talk about response time, we're talking about a number of things that factor in. So first of all, there's the time from the incident to the time someone calls 911. And then when someone calls 911, there's the processing time that it takes for them to get the information that's necessary to get the right type of response and to the right location. So there's that component. Then there's the dispatch, the time for our personnel to get to the fire apparatus or medic unit, and then the actual travel time, the time from leaving the station to the incident. So it may seem like a long time, but all this is done with a goal from our department in 7 minutes for a medical 90% of the time, and then 7 minutes and 20 seconds for fire type responses 90% of the time. So when you think about all those things that happen, that's a relatively short amount of time, and we want that to be our maximum. So we always want to get there quicker than that.
Believe me, folks, I've been in a fire station when they are called for service, and I've even seen firefighters stop in the middle of a bite when they're having lunch and put the spoon down and get ready and go out to the rigs. They do everything within their power to be able to get to your emergency as quickly as possible. And then, Dave, there are other factors too. This city has construction going on everywhere. There's traffic depending on the time of day. It could be morning drive, could be noon hour, could be evening drive. So there are factors, but computers help, dispatch helps, there's communication, there's computer aided information, all coming into play while the rigs are rolling to that emergency site.
Absolutely. And one of the first components is making sure that you've got your fire stations distributed in locations that you can reach those areas in that amount of time. So recently in the last several months, we've added Station 15 on Pine Lake Road, and then Station 16 in the area, 84th and O streets. And that really helps not only respond to those immediate areas, but it keeps those other units in service in their areas to so we're not stretching the response as much, and so we're able to get our apparatus to the call quicker. So we don't have actual a good set of data yet to show exactly what that impact is, but we certainly know it is improving as a result of opening those stations.
And Dave, let's emphasize too that not only the two new stations, 15 and 16, come from the quarter-cent sales tax that the public generously approved a number of years ago, but then you have Station 10 and Station 12, two previously existing stations that because of your studies were relocated, and that improves response times out of those two stations.
Absolutely. So with all the movement plus the addition of those two stations, we're sitting very well to have the meet the response time goals and even exceed the response time goals. And all that is it improves the outcomes for the customer, and that's what we're all about is saving lives, getting there quick, and taking care of your problem.
The volume of calls, too, something that is contained, by the way, folks, in the 2019 LFR annual report, which you can access online if you'd like to mine down and you enjoy graphs and statistics. Chief Despain has done an excellent job in recording all of this for the general public. That's available on the LFR website. It shows that calls for service are up considerably, up almost 16% as the population increased 7%.
Yep, the call volume continues to go up. I think that some of that is with the growth of the city, and then there tends to be a dependence for various people as the population gets older and that sort of thing. A little bit of a dependence on us to respond, and so I don't think there's too many places out there, and I haven't heard of any that you see a real reduction in call volume. That's just something that as the population grows and the population ages, that we see. And so we've always got to be watching for that, and then determining if we're meeting the needs. And that's why we have those response goals to make sure if we're not meeting those needs, we may have to look at whether we've got the right units in the right location, or whether in certain areas of the city it may be time to add to the number of fire stations, just like we did in the case of Station 15 and Station 16.
I believe in looking at the 2019 statistics, Dave. And again, let's put this in reference to the new stations. Station 12 opened up in mid-October of 2019. Station 15 opened up in mid-August of 2019. Then you have Station 16 opening up in 2020. So 2020 actually will reflect more accurately response times from these new stations and from the newly relocated stations.
Right. We won't have a full year for the impact of Station 16, but we certainly will for Station 12, Station 10, and Station 15.
Captain Dave Engler joining me on LNK TV. We are zooming today. Response time is our subject. Let's talk about the benefits the general public receive from new fire stations. We've already talked about response time. Obviously, every second that can be shaved off response to a call means an increased incremental percentage that the person at the other end is going to either be saved or the fire put out that much quicker. But it also benefits the public in terms of insurance. Why don't you tie the two together, a new station location within a neighborhood and insurance?
Right. Well, the longer it takes fire apparatus to get to an emergency, obviously, the more damage is going to be done. So as we put fire stations closer to your residence, and I think the insurance industry typically looks at 1.5 miles is where they look. So if we're within 1.5 miles of your residence, many insurance companies will start to drop the rate, as well as if you're near a fire hydrant. So you may have, when you went to get your insurance, you may have had those questions: where's the nearest fire station and where's the nearest fire hydrant? And that's how they help determine those rates. So in these cases of if you live in the area of Station 12, Station 15, so Station 15 is going to be south of Pine Lake Road, the area is 66th Street, and Station 16 around 84th and O. Those are areas you might want to be calling your insurance and see if they would give you a reduction in your rates, because you certainly have better coverage for fire protection.
I know too, Dave, that Lincoln Fire and Rescue is doing a better job, admittedly. I think Chief Despain would agree, getting out ahead of growth. Lincoln Public Schools has done this for a number of years, purchasing property out in expected growth areas, and Lincoln Fire and Rescue too. That way, when you do look at a piece of property to build, and when the city looks to expand, Lincoln Fire and Rescue has already, so to speak, set its flag down in a particular area. So you as a homeowner know that there will be a fire station perhaps in your neighborhood.
That's correct. And the area we're looking at, and we've got some land identified, is going to be just south of 40th and Yankee Hill Road. Obviously, there is a large potential for expansion out in that area, and so we're looking at that. And this may the station may not be built for 5 to 10 years, but at least we've got that location identified. It fits within all our other station locations, and if you're planning on building a home in that area, you can you can be assured that at some point in time there's going to be a fire station in your neighborhood.
Back to the subject of insurance, I learned as a member of the stakeholders task force that we talked about your neighborhood, you might get an insurance break. As a city, our rating has improved. I believe we're a 2.
We are in the 2.
Unless I'm mistaken, there is only a single 1 city, and I believe that's Grand Island. And Chief Despain explained to stakeholders there's a bigger jump between being a 3 and a 2 than really there is between a 2 and a 1. And there's the expense that's incurred through trying to get up to a 1. So at this point, we're very happy being a city that lives in 2. And there are factors that go into that citywide. The new fire stations helped. The number of fire hydrants help. The city water department also helps. Dispatch also helps. So it's a lot of different factors that go into a city benefiting from its emergency service, its first responders, and it's your neighborhood too that benefits. So give your insurance agent a call and see if you benefit.
Absolutely. And especially if you're in those areas where we've put the new stations, you may see a pretty good reduction. I'm not sure what that would be, but we do know that people who have called, they've said they've seen reductions, and so I would encourage everyone to do so.
Dave, in the amount of time that we have left, I'm very curious. In my head, all my years in radio, there's a clock in my head, so I know about how long things are taking. I'm wondering if that's the case with a firefighter and or a paramedic, because they are used to a certain amount of time to get to a location. Do firefighters and paramedics have that same clock that radio guys have?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure how it is for a radio guy, but our firefighters go on a lot of calls, and so they're pretty used to. They've got the timing down to where they can pretty much guess how long it's going to take to get there, and everything's pre-planned for us. So each person has a job to do. Whether it be on a medical, they carry in a certain bag, they perform a certain function. So everything is kind of pre-planned. So we're always shaving time off, again, because we want the outcome to be as great as possible. So we take steps all the time to just shave seconds, minutes, everything off. And so that's kind of how we operate all the time to make sure we get the best outcomes for the person. Certainly, if the public can help by stopping bleeding, performing CPR before we get there, that all buys us just that little extra time that we may need to have a positive outcome. So everything we do is timed out, and it's all for the purposes of success in the end.
Yeah, believe me, folks, LFR leaves the ad-libbing to the radio guys. They don't do that on site. Even to the point where you have been able to handle the additional emphasis on PPEs. That is an additional responsibility that LFR has taken on, and that's en route.
Yeah, we've always been pretty aggressive with our PPE. So our responders have always worn gloves. We've always worn goggles to protect the eyes. But with COVID, that changed a little bit in that now we're adding to that depending on what our doorway triage protocols say. And we may be wearing a mask. Well, we're always wearing a mask now, but we may be wearing a gown depending on the situation. So that's just a little bit of added protection that we're doing. It protects us, it protects the patient. And so that's a big change that we've seen with COVID that we weren't used to. You know, it was really rare in years past. Maybe during flu season, you'd wear a mask, and gowns would be on just specific calls. But now we're seeing it on a regular basis, and that's really changed for our providers.
So, in closing, there are a lot of factors that hold the potential to slow a first responder down. LFR sees that, LFR knows about those, and are making adjustments so that they can continue to improve response time, continue to get to the emergency scene as quickly as possible. And a takeaway for you folks living in the areas of stations 15 and 16, give your insurance agent a call and see if the location of those new stations in your neighborhood could make an impact on your insurance rates. And the same could be said then too, correct, Dave, for stations 10 and 11. They were existing stations, but they're in new space.
Absolutely. So, you know, as important as that savings is on the insurance, or the potential savings on the insurance premiums, the biggest thing is if you do have an emergency, the coverage is excellent, and we'll be able to get to your residents much quicker than previously. And you know, as important as money is to everyone, as well as myself, saving a life and saving muscle and all those things is the most important thing with these additional stations.
And I'll use that to close, thanking you again, members of the public, Lincoln, Nebraska, for passing that quarter-cent city sales tax increase. So not only new stations could be built, Dave, I think we can squeeze in one more subject, and that is the new communication system for LFR and for law enforcement. The quarter-cent sales tax also went to bring that into the 21st century. And why don't you tell us a nugget that often gets forgotten with regard to this computer system, how it may very well incrementally increase response times?
Well, I think this is going to be probably one of the greatest advancements that we're going to see for improvements on response times. And this is the new computer-aided dispatch system that the quarter-cent sales tax and 911 surcharge money is going to provide. The hardware's in, and we're looking at implementation around February. The programming is going on now. But for the first time in the city of Lincoln, we're going to actually be able to, through automated vehicle location, we're going to be able to get the closest unit to the calls. Right now, we do it, we're dispatched by district. And so we don't always know who's closest depending on what their location is at the time. So with this technology, we're actually going to be able to ensure that we get the closest unit there. And right now, what we have to do is if a dispatch goes out, then a unit that might be out driving around for some reason, if they're coming back from the hospital or whatever, they'll say, hey, we may be closer, what's your location? And so they trade locations, they decide who's the closest, and then they respond. But there's probably a good 30-second to a minute delay. This is going to get the closest unit responding right out of the chute. We're expecting, based on performance in other cities, a 12 to 17% improvement in response times. So I think that's going to be an amazing improvement come about this February. And I look forward to having us share a little bit more about the details of that as we move forward, and how that is programmed and how it works. But we're pretty excited about that improvement.
Good stuff, Dave. Thank you very much. The LFR continuing to improve to make our community even better. Captain Dave Engler from Lincoln Fire and Rescue. Thank you, Dave, very much.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for being with us today on Lincoln Fire and Rescue on LNK TV.